Hello everyone, this is StrawberryShorty here with my review of AI, the Somnium Files, Nirvana Initiative. And I gotta say, I kinda hate that they put the Somnium Files subtitle in there. Like, this is just one of those games that you're gonna send someone to GameStop for and they're gonna come back with the first one. Anyone ever have that happen to them? I've had that happen with, like, games given to me as gifts. But anyway, so this game is about. It's a follow up to the first game, obviously, and it is about two new Abyss agents, Mizuki and Ryuki, and their AI eyeball partners, Aiba and Tama. And they are investigating the half body serial killings, where half a body was found, and then 6 years later, the other half was found, with no signs of decomposition or anything. So, I am kind of stressed out recording this because I had been putting off making this video for a while because once I beat the game it was kind of a jumbled mess in my mind, and this video may get a little bit like wordy just because of that, but also because there's been some drama going on within the community, the community for this game, and I kind of want to address it in this video, but I'm going to save it for near the end. I imagine a lot of people are just gonna skip it, but I hope you'll stick around to check it out. But anyway, on to the game. So, I kind of want to start out talking about some visual and graphical things that kind of got to me, that I noticed. Like, my notes for this were just all mixed up and jumbled, but I tried to organize them as best as I could. So, the first thing I noticed was that the text is too small. And this is mostly just referring to the settings menu. Now they do tell you what each setting says when you like move your cursor over it, but it's still really annoying. And while you can change the text size, it does not affect this menu. It only affects like the in-game, like the character dialogue. Also about the text, there's like this pink text for like thoughts and stuff, and like, did it look a little blurry to anyone else? Like, that was something that I noticed, and it was really weird. The characters at the start I thought also looked a little weird. Maybe it was just because the art style had changed up a little bit. It did kind of start to look normal, so I don't know, maybe I just got used to it. Other weird little random things I noted. Moma kind of sounds different. I don't know why. Did he get a different voice actor? But that was just something that I really felt when I started the game. That's not really a visual thing, but I had it listed. So they brought back the different little manuals where they tell you like character profiles and trivia and appendix and all that. But for some reason, the new manual entries don't get an icon. Like, if you get something new, typically the book will have a little glowy icon on it, but that doesn't happen with manual entries for some reason. I don't know why that is. And then there are, oh boy, where to start next? I'll save that one for later, because that one's kind of related to another topic. But so let's talk a little bit about gameplay. Oh boy, the cursor in this, I even slowed it down, and it was just so hard to get it on certain things. Like, you'll be moving your cursor, and then suddenly it'll switch to like a discussion, and the discussion will like shift to a really weird angle. The cursor just, it moves too fast. It's so hard to get it on like little stuff. I spent like 10 minutes trying to get it on a coffee maker in Boss's office. And the cursor during these shooting QTEs is even worse. I don't know what is happening with the cursor during these QTEs. Like, it is fighting you actively. I came this close to failing most of the shooting QTEs because of that. And speaking of the QTEs, I personally think are terrible. I mean, oh my gosh. Like, you'll get prompts that like one after another are like, okay, press up left joystick and right joystick down at the same time, and then it'll be something completely different. And I remember this one QTE they gave me that showed L1 and R1, and it had like these jagged edges around it, so I thought I was supposed to like mash it, but no, you just had to hit it once, and because I mashed it, and like the second QTE popped up right away, I messed up that QTE and got a game over. And I don't even know. The QTEs in this drove me nuts. They were just too quick and just too many random buttons. And so next up, I have a lot of really random little notes. They added some new features in the menu. One is Tama's room / Iba's room, and these are basically for like talking with your AI partner, and like it could have been interesting, but they don't really say anything that sounded appealing. You can change their costumes too. The costumes were something else I had an issue with, because the costumes will only show up in Somniums that you have already beaten. Except that I couldn't get them to do that. Like, because there's, in this one too, there's a few Somniums that branch. So I went back and redid the Somnium, but my character was still wearing the same outfit, so I don't think the costumes ever really got to see any use. And I kind of think it's silly to not allow the costumes to show up in the game proper. Like, what's the point of them otherwise? There also wasn't really a lot of them, which was kind of disappointing. Also, a little bit of a random note, there's only one save slot, so that sucks. And there's an autosave too, which saved me a few times, but we'll get to that. So, oh yeah, they also added this little like gigapet Tamagotchi type creature that you care for. But like for some reason the manual in that, which tells you like which stat you have to get high to get a certain character, because they're all the little digital pets are based off the AI characters, but the stats have different names than the ones used in the pet menu, and some of the information regarding the highest stat is incorrect. And just overall, I didn't really like this feature. Like the digital pet, it'll just ask you a question, and each question will raise one stat by 3 and all the other stats by 1. And it's not particularly interesting. And one thing I noticed is that once your character becomes an adult character, they will just ask you like the same 2 questions over and over, and their answers aren't particularly interesting either. So it's just like, why does this exist? I mean, I know why it exists. It exists because they have a new currency that you can use to unlock like the costumes called like eyeballs. And they probably just wanted you to have like a way to keep continuously getting them, but oh boy, it's just kind of pointless overall. So next up, I gotta say, I had some issues early on with auto mode suddenly being on and just like locked on, and I could not turn it off. They also added some trivia to this game where like a banner at the top of the screen will like scroll by, and you can speed it up or slow it down by pressing the right or left directional buttons. The problem with this is that often the trivia will pop up when you are on the menu to like pick what you want to say to a character. So like, yeah, you could exit out of that sometimes, but it's kind of frustrating when you accidentally pick something you didn't mean to, because the trivia popped up at an unintended time or bad time. Yeah, like I said, this is super rambly. This game was just all over the place for me. Delete some of this note stuff. Alright. So, I've pretty much got a lot of the random notation stuff out of the way. So let's move on to the more coherent talk. So I guess we'll start with the new mechanic they added, which is called a wink sync, where you can basically peer into a character's mind on the spot for like a couple of seconds. And the big problem with this feature is that they added rather weird limitations to it. Like, the whole thing is supposed to be that you can only use it once a day. This is actually false. You can use it once per scene. And I'd imagine a lot of people like me missed doing the wink sync because you thought, well, if I use it now, I won't be able to use it later. So I don't know why they said that. And it's not really something that they needed to have a limitation on. Like, just let me peer into whatever character I want. Most of the stuff you'll see is just, like, random. Very rarely is it actually relevant to the plot. And often, if it is relevant to the plot, you'll be forced to wink sync, even if you've already done so in that scene. So, I don't really know why they bothered with it. But let's talk about some of the bigger issues I had. And these two were just... So, one thing that I thought was kind of nice about the first game, and I'm sure some other people hated it, was that everything you examined would trigger dialogue, usually between your player character and their AI partner, but also other characters that were in the room would often chime in. And I found these were sometimes funny, sometimes informative. They would give you more of certain characters. Well, they've kind of largely removed that. Like, one of the most notorious set pieces is Boss's office, because it's utterly filled with stuff to examine. And it still is. But most of the stuff you can examine will not trigger any dialogue. So you still have to examine the same amount of stuff because you don't know what will trigger dialogue, but most of it will be pointless. And that really sucks. It's extremely time consuming, and because of that, there are certain characters that just don't really get to do anything in the story because they're just not allowed to jump in on these conversations that they might have otherwise been a part of. And I think because of that, the humor in this game kind of took a bit of a blow. Another issue with this is that they kept the thing where you're, when you hover your cursor over something, the name of the item it's on will kind of gray out if you've fully examined it. And the problem is that new scenes will reset everything. Even if you would have examined something and it would give you the exact same flavor text, which is literally 99% of the time just like a table, a desk, a chair, you'll have to re-examine all that. And it just made examining things in this game a lot less fun. And I don't really get why they did it. I mean, I figure it was probably because some people complained, but oh boy. Like, I'm so bummed about that. Now let's talk about the other big gameplay thing, which are the Somniums. If you saw my review on the first game, you know that I had some issues with them. Because they were mostly filled with, like, no logic. You just tried different things until something worked. And I am happy to say that that's not really the case here. Overall, they do have more logic to them. Some of them were pretty interesting and creative. One I absolutely hated. Because another kind of issue this game has, it has a few puzzle type moments where you'll have to input a number or a word or something. And like, it's one case if it's like, hey, we need to put the password into this computer, what is it? And you like can learn it at some point by, like, I don't know, reading a document. But they'll like ask you to work out a number code, but they won't put the hint for the number code on the screen. And even if you look at the number, at the hint, it's so freaking difficult to try and figure it out. I had to look up most of the solutions for puzzles like these, and that was not really an enjoyable experience. And there are still, unfortunately, some downsides with these syncs. The first would be the swimming mechanic. And this is only in one Somnium. I'm not sure why it was at all. Like, it really wasn't necessary, but they introduced swimming, and it's not really done well, because, like, I'm trying to swim towards something, and either my character is moving agonizingly slow, or, like, they're being pulled in a different direction by some unseen force, and they can just go flying across the room, which can waste valuable time. And I just have no idea why it's like that. And then there were some issues regarding the timies. So the syncs were another thing where they removed a lot of the flavor text. There will be a lot of items in a sync that you can only inspect, and doing this will get you more of that eyeball currency. So on top of taking away some what could be some funny dialogue, it also does lead to issues where you might need a timey and you can't get one. Like there's one Somnium where you can solve it perfectly and you won't be able to finish with extra time on the clock, which in this game just nets you more eyeballs, so I guess it's not super important like it was in the first game, but it's still something I wanted to aim for, and I hated that there would be Somniums where I had to mess up in order to perfectly clear, and it's weird that it's like that, you know? So, before I talk about story, I want to throw out some glitches that I ran into. I already mentioned the digital pet instructions being wrong and the costumes not showing up. But I noticed there were some missing voice lines where characters would say something, but there would be no actual voiced dialogue. I experienced a weird issue with the main menu where when I would return to it, my cursor would jump around. Like instead of being on load game, it would like jump down to new game or to just a completely different option. I don't know if anyone else experienced that. There were also times when the log wasn't available. I don't know that that's necessarily a glitch as opposed to just a poor choice, but it was something that kind of bothered me. But probably the biggest glitch I encountered was one involving the rewind feature, you know, using the flowchart. Like, because one thing about this game, I think I accidentally deleted my note on it, but one thing this game did that drove me crazy was you could miss out on a lot of dialogue by picking one dialogue option early and just immediately ending the scene. And this would often be something completely random that you would not expect to do that. So I had to save every 5 seconds, often had to reload. And there was one point where you had to visit all these locations, and I visited one and immediately triggered a scene where the character leaves, and then that triggered a story scene, so I didn't get to examine that area. And it's like, well, I have a save here, so I'll rewind using the flowchart, examine that area, and then go back to my save. I found that every time I rewound, no matter where I rewound to, the minute I did anything, it would trigger the story cutscene. I even, like, returned to the start of that day, I returned to the end of the previous day, same thing happened. This is a very serious glitch. There is one other serious glitch where you're in a location and a character leaves, and the map button is supposed to pop up, and it didn't. And it's like, thank goodness for the autosave, because otherwise I might have had to redo a lot of content. And I mean, I hope that they patch these at some point, but it has been a while, so it's kind of weird that they haven't. But guess we gotta talk a bit about story now. Oh boy. This game, like, if you asked me to tell you this game's story, I would not be able to do so. That's what's making this review so difficult and why it's been so rambly. Like, this game, if I had to describe it, I would say it is all over the place. There is so much going on, and, you know, there's twists, but the twists didn't really affect me, in part because I couldn't really put together what the twist meant in relation to other things that had happened. Like, this feels like a game where you'd need to replay it to really be able to appreciate the twist. And I kind of don't want to replay it. Like, I have no motivation to do so at all. It also brings back one of the issues I had with the previous game with the abrupt endings. I'd argue it's even more egregious here. The story just ends randomly so many times. And, like, it'll often be when, like, things, like, really feel like they should continue. Like, oh, I'll tell you everything after we do this one thing. All right, let's go do the thing. End. And it's just like, why is it ending there? Like, that doesn't make any sense. There's also a hidden ending that you'd probably need to look up how to get. I don't know why they have an ending like that. I mean, it's worth experiencing, but... ugh. Yeah, this... I can't say I was crazy about this game. Like, I don't think it's terrible, but I don't think the twists were very effective. There were a lot of kind of contrived things, and it was just so much. Like, I'll be able to talk about it more in the spoiler section, but oh yeah, I remember the other thing I wanted to talk about. It's kind of related to the story. So before this game came out, they were like, we really don't want. We're going to make it so this game can be played without having played the first one. And the way this is basically handled is at the start of the game, you will be asked, hey, have you played the first game? And if you have, then they'll add in some stuff that relates to the first game. And it's not overall very well done. Like, it feels like they just kind of wedged in a few moments, and like a character will occasionally say or do something that references the first game, and it just feels really forced. And I just don't know why they did it like this. Like, the first game, like, this isn't the latest game in a long series, and you didn't want newcomers to be put off by that. This isn't a sequel to some super ancient game that would be really expensive, and maybe some people don't have it or have the console it's for. It's like, no, the first game came out a couple years ago. Just say it's a sequel and make people play the first game. Like, they don't want to touch on anything from the first game, so like, you'll expect to see certain characters interacting, and they won't, because the game doesn't want to give away that these two characters have this connection or this relationship, and they just tiptoe around everything, and it just does not work. And like, character development that we could be having isn't happening because they're trying so desperately. And like, if this was an alternate universe thing, I honestly think it might have worked better, but it's not, so I just don't know what they were thinking. So I think we'll go into the spoiler section. I don't know how this is gonna go. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the thoughts I have about this game. So, also, regarding the Somniums, I really liked the music in Leon's, although I do kind of, a little bit of a side note, I wish they had done him and Kazuna's romance a little better, because he starts out just kind of falling in love with her dancing, and it would have been nice to kind of see him fall in love with her. We don't really get to see them together much. But back to Somniums, I loved Iris's Pokemon-esque Somnium, with So as a gym leader in a baseball cap and using the various AI characters as our Pokemon. That was the funniest thing ever. Another, like, visual thing that was kind of weird was the game's constant use of the fade-out effect. Like, I can understand it if, like, you're talking to a character and the character leaves, fading out and then fading back in. But this game was fading out and fading in, like, almost every 2 seconds. And, like, it really kind of made the scenes feel a bit disjointed. Also, I gotta say, regarding So, in the Kusemon Somnium, when they start talking about his mistress and his illegitimate child, you totally think they're talking about Iris, and then it's like, no, he's got another one. And it's just like, I swear, if the killer turns out to be another one of So Sajima's illegitimate children, like, at this point, this man should just stop having kids. Like, if we ever get a third game, I'm just saying we should probably keep an eye on Iris. Anyway. Oh, where do I start? I noticed a lot of weird errors, like Marco being called Maruko, which, you know, I want to see Marco, by the way, but that was just a simple typo, but kind of bothered me. There was also an error where Kazuna said Mizuki wasn't living with Date when she was. I don't know what that was about. And there were some kind of moments that didn't really make sense, like the whole thing with the prototype sync machine, which, first of all, the existence of the prototype sync machine is a massive spoiler for the first game, and I feel like because of its relevance to the plot in this game, they couldn't just cut it out, so I don't know what they do there. But, like, with the whole thing with the prototype sync machine is that we knock the killer out, and it's like, quick, let's sync with him. And it's like, or you know, because he's a serial killer, we could call the police, have him taken into Abyss in custody, and then we could sync with him there. But it's like, no, we're going to use the prototype sync machine. And the whole thing that they claim is that they decided to keep it as a backup and they made it so that it couldn't be moved. But it's like, why would you keep the prototype sync machine in this warehouse where it's unguarded, and instead of moving it to Abyss? And, like, you don't apparently have to remove the eye anymore, but that's never addressed. I guess we're just supposed to assume that was some update. And there's this whole thing where it turns out Ryuki has TC Purge, but it's basically the whole Radical 6 thing from the Zero Escape series. They gotta stop adding viruses into these. I hated this TC Purge thing so much because it was so stupid. Like, Ryuki apparently has it, and they make this big deal of how it's like an airborne thing. How is he not infecting every other freaking character? We should all have it, shouldn't we? And, like, I didn't, like, dislike Ryuki, but they try to do the death fake out with him, and it's like, did anyone actually think he was dead? I didn't. And when they reveal he's still alive, like, I didn't particularly care. It's like, by that point in the game, you've barely interacted with him. He has not even been a character. Like, he just kind of disappears after his own part in the plot. So, yeah. Also, a really random note, but that one scene where we take Shoma into custody because Komeiji asks us to, and then he shows up later with the 3 girls. It's like, what the heck is going on at Abyss? Like, Komeiji is being threatened by people, and we just let his son go off with these random teenage girls. Like, he's supposed to be in protective custody. And I figured out the whole twist with Komeiji moving the body way too early. But, like, yeah, like, this is, like, a really rambly commentary, because this game's structure is all over the place, in part because they tried to do the crisscrossing timelines thing. And there's 2 Mizukis, but somehow, like, Mizuki 2, who we were playing as sometimes, wears the exact same outfit as the other Mizuki, and it's like, why? Like, that makes no sense. She also has the exact same weapon, she has the exact same bike, and it's like that one twist from that one Zero Escape game where realistically it shouldn't work, but because they lie to the player, it kind of does. Much like the twist with the bodies and when they're found. Like, they really kind of make it seem like it's this big case. They tell us, in fact, that it's supposed to be this big mystery of bodies showing up 6 years later, but that only actually happened with one of them. And there's just kind of too much dancing around it. Oh yeah, Mayumi is not in this. As a random note. Every other character from the previous game that can return does, except her. Some of the characters are given really weird parts, and in a way it's kind of depressing. Like, the one Yakuza guy apparently got divorced from the nurse, and we never learn what happened. And then the other Yakuza guy makes some bad choices, so his girl won't let him see his daughter, and it's like, that's depressing. Just so much depressing stuff. And then they bring back Amame, the mermaid girl, but even though all the other characters get an appearance upgrade for the future time, she doesn't, which I think kind of sucks. She just constantly looks the same. The reveal of her being the killer was semi-interesting, but she didn't really feel particularly threatening. And I had kind of figured out it had to be either her or Shoma, because they were the only ones that had motive, once we figured out that the current victims were the killer and the killer's accomplice. And because I had figured out also ages ago about Amame being Komeiji's daughter. And then, okay, let's talk about the Mizukis, as we'll call them. So, older Mizuki has apparently been adopted by Boss. And this whole thing with Boss was, what's her deal? Because they have this really random freaking ending where a sync tells us a body is hidden someplace, and she sends in the freaking SWAT team to arrest not only the owner of that place, which seems a bit much, but also Mizuki, young Mizuki, and it's like, what the frick? And the implications of this scene are that Boss or someone at Abyss is up to something. and it's just dropped. Like, this is one of the endings where it just ends abruptly, and whatever Boss is up to never gets addressed. And we also learn that she adopted the older Mizuki and trained her as a fighter, and it's like, why did you do this? Because, like, that whole thing, because, like, the older Mizuki had already been adopted. She had a family, and then she leaves that family to go with Boss for no explainable reason, and Boss is fighting this girl, training this girl to be her personal, like, soldier or whatever, which is kind of creepy. And, like, I don't believe this game was ever intended. Because Boss never mentioned having a daughter. I don't believe she was supposed to have a daughter. And then the whole thing with Mizuki being the daughter's clone and her being adopted by the Yokiuras, I don't believe that either. There's about 20 problems with it. Like, they try to quote the line where Shoko's like, I wish you had never been born. They're like, oh, she probably meant that she wished she hadn't adopted you. And it's like, no, I'm pretty sure she meant that you shouldn't have been born because she gave birth to you. She literally looks like you. And, like, you're trying to tell me Renju and Shoko, who clearly are busy, who clearly don't want children, were like, yeah, let's adopt a kid. And not just any kid, we'll adopt a 3-year-old. A child who can in no way take care of itself. Like, I don't buy that. And the stories they tell about little Mizuki are that even at 3, she was running through walls, demolishing a play castle that was huge, ripping swing set chains apart, pulling logs out of the ground. Like, and first I'm surprised that the Kazuna family, Kazuna and her father, didn't adopt her, but they give her to the Okiuras, and it's like, so are we supposed to believe Mizuki was at home running through walls and tearing things apart? Because, like, I feel like Shoko's feelings might be slightly more understandable in that case. Like, your child is running through the walls every time she throws a temper tantrum. That'd be kind of concerning. But it's like, Shoko never mentions any of that, because, again, I'm pretty sure this game was never intended to exist. And, like, yeah, sometimes that's how it is with sequels, but I really hate when they try to tack on all this extra backstory stuff. And because it kind of messes with the existing things. Like, there was no reason to have Mizuki be adopted. I mean, they could easily have worked the genetic experiments into her backstory. But, yeah, so just... ugh, I'm already exhausted. The ending, the not secret ending, was kind of disappointing. Because it's like, by that point, the killer has already been dead for a while, and it's like, we have to stop the virus, and I'm so tired of stopping viruses in these games. And we just fight a bunch of faceless villains, and there's so many QuickTime events, and... ugh. Yeah, this was not a great game for me. I ended up with this insanely rambly review that I don't know makes much sense. I had so much trouble trying to organize this chaos, you know? And that's all the game is to me. It's chaotic. Like I just don't even know. It just doesn't really work for me, and I hope they don't keep trying to milk this series. Or if they make a sequel, they just do like an alternate universe thing and never try to do the it's spoiler-free thing again. Because, jeez. So, I think we'll leave the review there. I should have just made this a rant. The rants tend to be more rambly. So, if you head out now, thanks for watching. Please leave a comment. I'm going to kind of touch a little bit upon that drama, which was within the community for AI the Somnium files. Basically, I had some mods make some really nasty comments about me, kind of implying that I had only posted within the community so that I could advertise my channel, which is not true. They had no basis for it, and when I challenged them to provide a basis, they blocked me from the subreddit. So, yeah, I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that, because I dealt with some bullying in the Uchikoshi fandom before, and not only did they say that stuff about my motives, but they also made comments about my content. and they called it low effort. And like, look, you can like my videos, you can hate my videos, but to call my videos low effort, like, the closest to being low effort would be the shorter reviews. Every other review I make, every other video I make, takes an insane amount of effort. Like, and I pointed it out, like, all the editing stuff I have to do to make each and every single one of these videos, which you might not realize it, but it is very time consuming. I had a 6-minute video that took over a day to make because of various errors that kept happening with the footage. And just downloading and uploading and converting and putting together videos, it takes a lot of effort. And like, when I pointed that out, they kept calling my videos low effort and saying stuff like, oh, that's just basic editing stuff. Anyone can do that. But even big name YouTubers, like, pay people to edit their videos because it's not that easy, because it's so time consuming. And I know this is getting slightly off topic, but I just really wanted to point that out because it was really bothering me, and I really don't like seeing people abuse their power that way. And like imagine someone who's posting a cosplay picture who isn't good at sewing and doesn't have money for materials or some fancy professional cosplay. Imagine they post a photo of themselves to this community and the mods delete it and say, oh, that's a low effort cosplay. Or someone who's not good at drawing makes a drawing and they delete it and say it's low effort. Like, they make this whole big show of talking about how they want to encourage fan content, how they support fan content, and then they make disparaging remarks like that. Not just saying, I don't like this, but actually insisting that you put no effort into it. And don't do that to people. Like, you're free to not like the content, but don't accuse the person of not trying unless there's real evidence that they have not tried. And I just want people to know how hard it is to edit videos. I'm not just talking about me here, I'm just talking about everyone. Because I do think some people really do think that editing is just putting 2 clips together and walking away, and it isn't. But I've rambled on enough. If you stayed for this part of the review, this little personal rant that I needed to get off my chest, thank you. It was just really bothering me, and I had to say it because nobody ever wants to call attention to this stuff, you know, and there's not really any place else I can say it. I don't really like bringing drama to my channel, but I hate kind of seeing stuff like this happen, and I worry about it happening to someone else. But again, thank you so much for watching. Please leave a comment, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!